Hey everyone, it's Lynnea for LDRS Creative. Today we're going to be using the Wildwood Bundle and those little Wildwood sentiment frame and tag dies to create 5 easy cards. I thought that I would first start by giving you a quick walkthrough of the products in this bundle, and then we'll jump right into creating all 5 cards. So first up in the bundle is the Wildwood card making kit. And this kit is really kind of a standalone if you wanted it to be. You could create some gorgeous cards using just the products in this kit. So to get started, there are 10 die cut toppers. You're going to get 2 each of 5 different woodland critter designs. So there's the bears, the foxes, these little birds, and then there are also some deer and wolves. And you'll notice that these toppers are in both portrait and landscape style. So you're going to be able to create a few different styles of cards. Now there are also 10 A2 printed card base, again 2 each of 5 designs, and you're going to get the same designs, and they're going to be both in portrait and in landscape style. So again, you're going to be able to create some different cards here, and here's how this kit is different. The printed toppers are the same scenery as the printed card bases. So if you wanted to, you could keep them separate and create double the amount of cards. But really, this fabulous idea is to layer these up using some dimensional foam adhesive and create this shadow effect by putting the matching topper on top of the coordinating card base. And you can see here how they line up just perfectly, and with a little bit of dimension, this is going to give a really fun look. And we will be diving into that in just a little bit. Next up, you're going to get 1 sheet of the Wildwood Rub-On Transfer Sentiments, and these are going to be in black. Hang tight though, because included in this bundle there's an extra pack of these Rub-On Sentiments. You're also going to get some envelopes, and these envelopes are sized larger than the A2 cards, so if you wanted to, you could create some larger card designs, and I'm going to show you that later on in this video. I'm going to show you how to take these A2 printed designs and kind of stretch them a little bit. So also in the Wildwood bundle, there are the Wildwood Sentiment Rub-Ons, and you're going to get 1 sheet in black and 1 sheet in gold foil. Then the Wildwood Skies, you're going to get 1 sheet of the gold foil stars and 1 sheet of these white snowflakes, and these are great for adding some beautiful details. Now these sentiments work perfectly with this little add-on die set. This die set is the Wildwood Sentiment and Frame and Tag dies, and so that tiny little tag you can use to cut out those tiny sentiments, and those sentiments, that larger die, will cut right out for you. Also included in this bundle are the Wildwood pattern papers. You're going to get 24 sheets, and each one is double-sided. So what I'm doing here is just kind of showing you the front and the reverse side of each of the sheets. So on the front side is a more bold pattern, and then on the reverse side is a more subtle or distressed pattern. And these really do coordinate not just with the front and the back, but you can mix and match these all throughout this Wildwood pattern paper pack. I really love how all of these patterns and colors work together. Let's go ahead and dive in and make a card. This first one is going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I'm just using some of the products from that Wildwood card making kit. I have the Foxes A2 topper, and then the coordinating A2 printed card base as well. Here's my Rub-On Sentiment sheet, and I'm using the black one that does come in that card kit. And I'm just going to choose the sentiment that I want to adhere directly onto that printed A2 topper. I'm not going to be using those coordinating dies quite yet, but I will, don't worry. Just wanted to show you the easiest way to pull together a card. Once I've selected my sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and just hold those 2 pieces together and trim it out. Now I wanted to add some snow, and so I have those Wildwood Skies Rub-On transfers, and I have a piece of snow, and I'm just kind of cutting this down to about 1/8 of that 5x7 sheet. Do not worry about cutting right through the snow. It really is not going to matter. I peeled off that backer, and now I'm just kind of holding it by a corner and using my bone folder, and I'm rubbing on little bits of the snow here and there. I want this to look like random snowfall, and I really want to stretch this snow as much as I can. So I'm just kind of putting it here and there, being sure to get it onto the darker areas, especially like the trees, and even putting some on the little bodies of the foxes. And I'm just going to keep placing and rubbing and picking up until that whole little portion is completely empty. You can see there how far a little bit of that snow really goes. Now I'm going to add my rub-on sentiment. So again, I'm removing that backer, I'm positioning my sentiment right where I want it to go, getting it straight, and then I will press that down and use my bone folder to rub over that sentiment. Now here I do want to be a little bit more precise. I want to make sure that I'm getting a perfect transfer, so I'm being sure to rub all over that sentiment. Then I'm going to pull this up nice and slow. I worked pretty quickly with the snow because it didn't really matter if it didn't transfer fully, because snow is not perfect anyway. But the sentiment, I wanted a perfect transfer, so I peeled that back slowly, and you saw me put it back down so that if I had missed an area, I can just rub right back down over it. Now all I have to do is just add this topper to my card. To do this, I'm going to add some foam tape to the back, and I'm going to look for what I like to call anchor points. And for me, these are points where the design on the A2 card topper stops abruptly, and it continues on to that card background. So most of the time it's going to be snow on the bottom and treetops at the top. So I just pretty much used that tree on the top right and top left to make sure this was adhered and nice and straight, and I popped that down, and that's it. There's card number 1 done in just about 3 minutes. So if you need a card super quick, that's definitely an easy go-to design. For card 2, I'm going to step things up just a little bit, nothing too fancy yet. I grabbed some of those Wildwood pattern papers, and I thought that it would be pretty to have some of them just kind of peeking out from my card design. So I have a piece of a greenish textured one at the bottom, and then a stripe of brighter red, and that matches those birds just perfectly. Now I went ahead and I used those tag dies, and I cut out just some dummy pieces here because this is going to help me decide placement. I'm going to be using the gold foil sentiments, and with the gold foil, it's important to remember that this is real foil that's on the back of these. So you can use a bone folder, but I find that the foil transfers a lot better if I use my die cutting machine. So I went ahead and I chose my sentiment label that I wanted to use. I put that down onto some white cardstock. Then I'm just going to run this right through my die cutting machine. I'm using my regular plate sandwich, just like if I was cutting a wafer thin die, but I have nothing in there. It's just my cardstock with the gold foil, and then I like to put a little piece of typing paper on top just so that the etches in my cutting plates don't transfer into my sentiment. Then I'm just going to pull this back, and you're going to see how beautifully this transfers. Now, I usually like to use a bone folder when I'm transferring rub-ons, and that is because when I'm cutting these out, you need to be super, super careful that you don't put that repositional tape, my washi tape, over top of your rub-on, because that will pull that rub-on back up off of your paper. So I cut little pieces of tape, and I just kind of position them right on the edge. And here you can see I did get a little bit on the gold, so I peeled it off nice and easy, and a little bit of the gold shine did come off on my tape, but not enough that it was noticeable, I don't think. But just I caution you when you're putting tape and die cutting these after the fact, be careful because it will pull up your rub-on. So you're going to see me throughout this video doing this both ways, kind of die cutting first and then doing my rub-on transfers, and doing my rub-on transfers and then die cutting. Do whatever works best for you. I went ahead and I added those strips of pattern paper to the bottom of my card base, and then I'm using that same technique where I'm aligning those anchor points, specifically that tree on the top left and at the top center there, because that's where my card panel kind of abruptly stops and continues on, so it's easy to line those up. I used some foam tape and put that down, and now I'm just adding some thin twine through that little hole at the top of my tag. I sped this up quite a bit because it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to tie this little bow. I went ahead and I put those sentiments down, and then I realized that I wanted to add some snow. And it's okay because these rub-on transfers are really easy to transfer. So even though I have this already up on foam, which kind of gives me an unlevel playing field here, I was able to quickly and easily use my bone folder and just add some little bits of snow here and there across my card. So that's card number 2, all finished. Stepped up just a little bit from the first card, but still, I don't think it's anything that's too hard to replicate. Let's go ahead and go on to number 3, and this is where I wanted to show you a different way to kind of stretch this kit. I have created more cards than what I have shown you in this video with this kit. So I had lots and lots of strips of pattern paper left over from those cards. So I just kind of took them, and they're all different widths, they're all different patterns, different colors, but again, this Wildwood pattern paper pack all fits together so perfectly. So I have an A2 card base from my stash, just plain white, and I'm using some liquid adhesive and just kind of covering this card base and putting down these strips of paper here and there across my card. It's going to stretch all the way across, and then once I'm done, I can just flip this over, use my scissors to give that a little haircut, and there is my custom background. It's super fun, but that A2 topper kind of covers it up more than what I wanted. So I grabbed my Elegant Pinpoint frame dies, and these dies cut the exact shape as the panels in this kit. So I went ahead and just grabbed one slightly smaller than the A2 topper that I wanted to use, and I'm just going to cut right into this. Because it's the same shape and everything, you can put it in the center or you can move it slightly up or down, doesn't really matter. I went pretty much dead center, cut that out, and now you can see that I have a slightly smaller topper so that more of those pattern papers show through the background. Now I've used snow on my first 2 cards, and I wanted to show you how beautiful these gold foil stars are. So I'm kind of doing that same technique as I did before, where I just cut a little portion of this down, and I'm moving it around the outer edge of my card. Remember that I'm putting that wolves panel in the middle, so I don't need to worry about wasting my rub-on transfers in the center of my card. I just need to get it around the edge. So I'm going ahead and working through and rubbing those on, and I used a larger one of those Elegant Pinpoint frames to cut a piece of vellum. I thought that having that topper directly on top of those pattern papers kind of blended in just a little bit too much, and the vellum gave it a nice soft edge and a little break for the eye. I chose one of my sentiments. I already pre-cut my tag out, and now I'm just going to use my bone folder and rub that into place. So here's what I was talking about. Do whatever fits your style best. If you like to die cut and then do the rub-on, or do the rub-on and then do the die cutting, both ways work just perfectly. Here's card number 3. Check out those gold stars in the background. They're very subtle, but I think they add just this nice little hint of glimmer and shine, and it just makes me really happy anytime a card shines just a little bit. Alright, so for these last 2 cards, we're going to step outside of that range of A2 cards. Remember I said the envelopes in the Wildwood kit are slightly larger? So I decided to make a card base that was larger than the A2 cards. So my card base is 5.5 by 5 3/4. I have a piece of gold foil cardstock from my stash that I cut down, and then I'm taking that red Wildwood pattern paper and I trimmed that down to layer. Now I wanted to be able to stretch the printed A2 toppers just a little bit, so I grabbed my LDRS Creative Arches dies, and I think this is the second largest one, maybe third largest, and I'm just going to cut right into that A2 topper. I chose the one that would cut the largest amount of that topper that would fit right inside of there. So I cut that down into an arch shape, so now I have that same pattern just as an arch. And I wanted to still kind of replicate that layered look from the A2 cards, so I'm taking the coordinating A2 base and stepping up to a slightly larger arch, and I'm going to center that right in the middle and then die cut this. So instead of this being an A2 card base, it's actually going to become a second layer for my card. So now you can see how I'm going to layer up these 2 pieces, and then they're actually going to pop right onto my pattern paper layered card base right in the middle. Nothing's adhered down yet. I just like to kind of play around before I have things adhered so that I can know for sure how things are looking, making sure that it's looking the same in my head as it's going to look on the actual physical project. So I kind of looked at this for a minute, and I decided to add some more gold shine to match that gold foil cardstock that I pulled in from my stash. So I'm going to grab more of those Wildwood Skies transfers in the gold foil, and I'm going to put it right onto my card topper that I cut with the smaller arch. So this is going to be the panel that's going to be front and center. This is my focal point panel. And I'm taking little bits of those gold foil stars and just, again, just like with the snow, moving it around here and there. It doesn't matter if it's absolutely perfect, because since it's that gold foil, the light's going to catch it and it's going to just look absolutely beautiful. Now that I have that done, I can work on getting things layered up, but I still wanted there to be, just something a little more. So I thought about kind of moving this to the left or to the right, having the sentiment on the opposite side, maybe having the sentiment in the middle. This is where cutting one of those sentiment label tags without having the sentiment on it and just kind of moving it around to get a good idea of placement, that's one of my favorite tips and tricks. So here's my panel. I have that adhered to both layers. Now I thought that I'd add some twine wrapping around it. One of my biggest tips and tricks for adding twine is to secure it at the back using some low-tack tape. Nobody is going to see how ugly the back of your project is. So use as little or as much tape on the back as you want, because nobody's going to know. So I added just a couple strips of tape to adhere that twine to the back. That's going to help that keep secure while I add just some more little elements. So I tied a bow, and I'm going to just use a little bit of liquid adhesive, just a dab, to kind of adhere that bow. And it's going to look like I took a whole lot of time to tie that directly onto my card. Here's the finished project. I added one of those gold foil sentiments to fit with the gold look of this card. Isn't it just really pretty? And it's an unexpected size, and I love how I took those Arches dies and kind of stretched those card fronts to make it something different. Let's do something again with a different sized card. I know a lot of you really love 5x7 cards, so I thought that I would take these deer and make them into a 5x7 layered card. I'm going back to those elegant pinpoint frames dies, and this time, instead of cutting it right from the center, I wanted to get more of the deer in the center, so I'm actually kind of moving that die down, and I'm just going to cut that A2 topper. Now I have some of the Wildwood pattern papers, and I've trimmed them down, layered them up with some white, and then I'm just going to add some snow rub-ons to the front of this little focal point panel here. Again, I just have a little bit of that snow that I've cut, and I'm just going to rub it here and there across my panel, making sure that I get it on the darkest areas, because that's where it's really going to show up. Then I'm going to use one of those little tiny tags again. This time I have Smile. I'm rubbing on that sentiment. And then I'm going to take one of those Wildwood sentiments and put it onto that label. I'm using the black one this time, and I'm just going to make sure that I rub over that really nicely with my bone folder and peel back that acetate. And then it's just time to kind of start adhering this card together. I thought that I'd do some twine again. I really liked it on the last one. So again, I'm using that trick where I'm securing it to the back with washi tape. Again, add as much as you want. Nobody's going to see it. This time though, I'm going to take some twine and put it right through the hole at the top of that little tag. And then I'm going to tie a bow. So again, it's going to look like I really took the time to twirl that twine around and tie it all at the same time, when really I didn't. I cheated, but nobody's going to know except for you and me. I tied that bow, trimmed it down, and then I just layered everything up with foam tape really nice and easily. And here is my finished 5th card. I left that tag free moving, but if you wanted to, you could secure it down. Let's go ahead and take a look at all 5 cards that I made today. I specifically created one card with each of the patterned A2 toppers to give you a good idea of how each of these cards would look. So I really only used half of the products in that kit. There's still 5 more toppers and 5 more card bases. You could even make it more if you wanted to. For instance, with that last card with the deer, I only used the topper, so I still have that extra card base. I can just add a sentiment on there and I'll have a quick and easy card all done. I really hope you enjoyed looking at these Wildwood products and the cards that I created, and I hope that it inspires you to take a look at this bundle and kind of step outside the box and use these products in a way that is different than how the kit was intended to be used. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I will see you again really soon, and I have listed and linked the products I used in this video in the description below. I'll see you again soon. Bye!